Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast. So there I was. It's how all great aviation tales begin. And we've got some great ones this week. The show this week is Frankentanker.
The Frankentanker.
The Frankentanker. And it kind of still will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we talked
sense.
to Sparky last week. We're talking to Sparky again this week. And he tells why the 46 is a Frankentanker.
Yeah, it all makes sense when you hear our test pilot describe it.
Yeah, it does indeed. So fun guy to talk to. Went to test pilot school, B-2 pilot, C-17 pilot. We start off this week asking about the B-17 and the B-17. Yeah, talk about Franken bomber maybe. I don't know. Let's try the B-2.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, can't really see it
to fly that thing.
Well, yeah,
no, you can't. Even if you're looking at it, you can't see it.
Yeah, it's invisible. But he flew it, and it dispelled a few myths that I had in my mind about it.
Ditto.
Yeah,
ditto.
I don't want to ruin it, but yeah.
Although actually, 2 people, long haul.
Yeah, no kidding. Brutal.
Yeah, not much like Dr. Strangelove at all going on in there, though. So.
Yeah, but
talks about it got a little somber there at one point, talking about a T-38 crash. He killed a classmate of his at test pilot school, and he was the last guy to fly that jet successfully. That kind of sobers you up, huh?
Yeah, that's always a sobering moment.
Yeah,
talking about a fallen comrade, and it gets real close to home when you're the last guy who flew the jet.
Yeah,
that makes you think. Could have been you.
Could have been me.
Right?
Could
have been me.
Absolutely.
By the grace of God.
Then talks a little bit about his career since leaving the Air Force and hence getting into the Frankentanker and some, why and how they stall big jets on purpose. Are you knucking futs? Why would you do that?
Now, I don't know that we should tease this, but we did talk about how Wayne Newton stole his wife, gave him a call sign.
Yeah. We did indeed.
Wayne Newton
makes sense.
He's my uncle, and he won't ever give me show tickets.
Oh, bastard.
I know. It's not right.
It's just wrong.
It is wrong.
I can see the resemblance. The resemblance.
Yeah. Dankeschön. You got it.
All right. Hey, how about we get out of the way and hear the rest of this show with Sparky?
Oh, you guys are going to like it.
All right. Yeah. Till next week, folks. Stay safe and don't sit on that ejection seat, Neil.
Don't do it.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
What's the most common misconception about the B-2 that you wish people understood, and what kind of mindset thrives in a B-2 cockpit? And I'm thinking that's more of a tactical way of saying that. What do you... There's... I guess the best way to ask that is the planning harder than the flying?
I wouldn't say it's harder, but it's a significant part of it. Yes, the flying. I mean, flying is. I wouldn't say easy. The frustration for me with the B-2 coming from the C-17, which is, I would say, pretty similar to a commercial type of aircraft where you've got an FMC computer that you can program your whole flight and get airborne, turn on the autopilot, and it'll take you where you're going. And there's very little interaction. B-2 was, like I said earlier, built from the tactical perspective. I think there were a lot of F-111 flight crew involved in the development, of course, B-52. And when, like I said earlier, different communities have different cultures and and what they're familiar with. Well, if you're not familiar with, databases in a computer to be able to just bring up, let's say, hey, I want to go direct to Minneapolis or Kansas City. In a commercial plane, you can just type in your FMC. I want to go direct to MCI and execute and go. Well, in the B-2, it was more like a fighter or a tactical aircraft where you had to carry with you everything that was in that system. There was no database. It was whatever you brought with you on a little card, plug it in the computer. And so if air traffic control cleared you direct to a point that was not in your database that you brought with you that day, then you had to create that point by going to a numbered series thing.
Put in latitude, longitude.
Yeah, lat long, create a number, and then it was a lot of bookkeeping. And so it was beautifully designed for nuclear holocaust, but not well designed for flying around in an air traffic control environment. I mean, we would go out and file a flight plan with, and I learned there that there's a maximum number of points on a flight plan that you can file before you have to file a second flight plan. Somewhere in the 60. Yeah, and you can't fly airways in the B-2. We would have roll in and roll out points. So we would file lat long to lat long to lat long.
Oh boy,
it was a lot of bookkeeping. So it was high workload in that regard. But when it came to bombing, it was, the pilot flying was essentially the truck driver. They would just keep the parameters, airspeed and altitude within the weapons limits, and then the pilot in the right seat, who originally was designed to be a weapon system operator, so a WISO. In fact, a lot of the circuit breakers are still labeled WISO. The WISO light, lap light, the WISO this and that. The ejection seat says WISO on it. But anyways, they turned it into a two-pilot airplane to accommodate the long missions and air refueling. But it was developed as a pilot WISO. And so the pilot in the right is the more senior, more experienced guy, and they call him the mission commander, and they're the ones managing radar, managing the mission and whatnot. So, but when it comes to bombing, it was quite literally, if you're on parameters, it was switches up, so your safe switches for your weapons release, and then you would make sure you were in auto missile. I don't know why it was called missile, but you're in auto mode for release. And if you were in the corridor, the weapons bay doors would open by themselves. You would drop the bombs. The rotary launcher would rotate into position, drop each bomb, and then the doors would close all automatically. So our joke was, on a bomb run, it was switches up, auto missile, eat a sandwich. That's how easy it was.
Gear up, flaps up, coffee cup. All right. Right. Similar. Shit hot. No shit, it's that automated, and it's funny that, you can't fly direct to Liberal, Kansas, but, if you're in the corridor, the switch is up, down go to bombs. Oh, that's amazing.
There were some. So I'm seeing on the screen missions could be as long as 30 hours. Before I got there, after September 11th, they flew, I believe, 6 B-2 missions over Afghanistan in OIF, and I think they hold the record for longest combat mission. And they were over 40.
2 crews, 1 crew, rotate.
2 pilots.
That's it.
That's it.
So you
and
Home Depot bucket to crap in, and one guy sleeping.
We had a honey bucket right behind the pilot on the right side. It's similar in size to, I would say, a little bit smaller than a 767 flight deck. From the pilot seats forward, it's very familiar. Right behind the seats is a little, a space to stand up with the hatch to climb down the ladder to get out of the plane. On the left side behind the pilot seat, and on the right side, tucked against the wall, was a little honey bucket. They had a provision for a defensive systems operator in the original design way back, So there was kind of a cubby. And if you look at the top of a B-2, you'll see a third kind of painted cutout for an additional ejection seat hatch. So there was, in the original design, there was going to be 3 crew members with a DSO, but they got rid of that crew position with computers and whatnot. So we have a little bit of space, aft of that honey bucket that accommodated some, a bag and lunch and cooler, and then they added some communications racks for some strap-on comm capabilities that came along later in the life of the B-2.
I didn't realize it was that spacious.
Yeah, right. Neither did I. Damn. The next question we have actually came from Sticks. What was your longest mission, Sparky, in the B-2?
So I had a couple of 22-hour plus missions. I happened to be there actively at Whiteman during operations where we didn't have any real-world missions, no dropping bombs in anger.
Sure.
So everything was training. We had a training requirement annually to do what we called a global power mission, and to qualify as global power, it would be 18 hours plus. And we typically planned them for 20 or 22 hours. And so,
what are you cruising at? Let me, because I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah, we would cruise at your standard cruising altitudes, mid-30s.
0.82, 0.85 Mach.
No,
Or
we were
Probably
0.8.
You can't talk about that.
I think it's not classified what our limit is. We were 0.8 limited. We were a slow airplane. So,
really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of understand that, aerodynamically speaking. Okay. So 0.8 Mach, 22 hours.
Remember, this is a boomerang that's not
exactly
flying like a
exactly.
boomerang.
The aerodynamics are kind of
when you
Alpha Fox uniform.
look directly from the side, it looks like a guppy, or it looks a little strange. But if you're flying on the wing and it turns into you, it can be pretty scary.
What the hell?
It's like it gets very big very fast. But no, we would
only imagine. So, but at 22 hours at those kind of speeds, you're looking at that 7,000 or 8,000 miles.
I don't know what the distance is, but
okay. But let's focus on. Hold on, you're missing the point here. Yeah. There's 2 guys in that cockpit.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There's not 2 crews that get breaks and spell
right.
each other.
I mean, my longest mission is 17 and a half hours, and I had 2 full crews. I had plenty of steaks, a nice galley, a bunk to go sleep in, movies to watch, books to read.
Yeah, so let's back up a second.
I'm guessing you had none
What
of that.
does that look like for a B-2 pilot?
So I get this a lot. Everybody thinks, oh man, those 24-hour missions, that's a nightmare to think about. But I'll tell you, I would much rather do a single 24-hour mission in a B-2 once a year than do a single 3-week mission in a C-17 that takes me all over who knows where I've got an augmented crew and I've got a bunk, but you're a zombie 3 days into it, because you're always landing in a different time zone. You may be landing at 5 in the morning after a 20-hour day and nothing's open. You're exhausted, you're hungry, but nothing's open. So you go to the hotel, you get into the hotel. Next thing you know, you wake up, it's 11:30 p.m., nothing's open, there's no food.
Sounds like a FedEx pilot, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah, right.
So
you got a choice.
So,
you can eat or you can sleep, but you can't do both.
so back to the B-2. We had a very good physiology department at the base that would work out your circadian rhythm cycle and say, all right, here's your takeoff time. At this time, your body clock says you're supposed to be here. You could augment with caffeine, and then for the long missions, they would issue you some go pills. They would issue us no-go pills in preparation for the flight, depending on when it departed. But they would issue
chemistry.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, but the one flight I do remember. So I did the flight from Whiteman to Guam. That was only about 16 to 18 hours. But then I did a mission from Guam out to Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska for an exercise practice, dropping bombs or some sort of exercise, and then back to Guam. So that was a a 24-hour mission. And I didn't have any experience with the go pills at that point, other than they test them out on you on the ground, in preparation. And so I wanted to delay using them as long as possible because, I'd done C-17 missions for years and been up, and everybody's pulled all-nighters at college and whatnot. So I wanted to delay using them as long as possible because once you start using them, you have to use them to the completion of the sortie. And so we get up to Eielson, we do our bombing or our exercise, whatever, and then we start heading back to Guam. And we're over the Aleutian Islands, and the other pilot happened to also be a former C-17 guy. He's like, all right, I'm going to take a nap. So we'd put a cot, those Army cots, those green Army cots?
Yeah.
They would almost fit perfectly right behind the pilot seats in that.
Okay.
They had to modify them to take a couple inches off, and they were almost the perfect height to be flush with the honey bucket, the seat, the toilet seat. So for tall people, you put your head to the left, put your feet on the honey bucket on that shortened cot, slightly shortened cot. I'm not that tall, so I fit on the cot just fine. But he goes to take a nap, and so I popped a pill. And I'll tell you, I didn't feel high in any way, but I felt like I just had to get shit done. And so I'm sitting there. So I'm just sitting there flying over Shimia, Alaska or whatever, and we're in formation, and we carried a little laptop on a Lazy Susan right between the two pilots that we could use for communications, tie into some R210 radios for digital communications. And so you could email your OPSO and email
all secure, right? All secure.
Yes, absolutely.
Everything. Yeah.
Email your wingman and whatnot. And so I'm sitting there emailing. I'm creating targets. In the B2, you just create targets. You use the radar and create targets and then bomb them. And so I'm sitting there bombing, emailing, and just doing shit because I just felt like I had to get stuff done. And in the meantime, I'm thinking back to my time the C-17 flying over the Aleutian Islands, and where all you can do is just sit there and just barely stay awake to make your
right.
HF.
Yeah. How you doing? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah,
and you're
good.
Bouncing your head off the panel and.
So yeah, I did.
What drug was it? Do you know what drug they gave you?
Dextroamphetamine. We called it Dex. It was some amphetamines, speed.
Okay. Oh, shit, huh?
Pharmaceutical.
And my math was a little wrong earlier, folks. I just looked at it. 0.8 Mach, 0 winds, 22 hours, about 10,500 miles. Statute miles, 9,500.
Hey, that's pretty good off the cuff there for an old guy.
Yeah, well,
That's pretty good.
I happen to have a computer in front of me that has calculators. So
whoa, geez. Wow, so that's a lot that I never even considered. And so one guy sleeps, the other guy's on the go pill, and then you trade off when you come down and up type thing on the long.
Yeah, I mean at that point once you start taking the pills, you're not going back to take a nap. So
you're done. Okay,
you're just
is that right? Okay.
You're just in the seat hanging out, finish out the sortie. So there's maybe
done.
Yeah, getting shit done.
There's maybe three or four total air refuelings in that 24-hour period. So that's where it gets interesting. If you are tired, is to do the air refueling. But
yeah, Repeat knows all about that.
Funny, you're not allowed to take drugs and go fly unless, of course, you have to go fly a long flight, and they give you drugs to go fly. So just saying.
Yeah, I noticed Sticks put up civilian pilots can't fly for 72 hours after the no-goes. Well, when we were flying in Afghanistan, you probably had the same thing, man. You take the no-goes when you finish the mission and go to sleep. You'd get up the next night and fly another mission.
Fly. Oh yeah. We would use them the 8 hour to get your 8 hours prior to getting up and going to go fly. So
yeah.
Ambient. That's what we used.
All right. Well, let's talk about to test pilot school. because that's no small feat. Number one, and I applied 17 times. You applied once, got picked. So obviously, you got a 72 inch.
Like I said, my timing was good.
You're very
they
humble.
needed people.
You're very okay. But let's talk about that. So you didn't go straight.
Here's your decision. What 2 hours a night did you get to sleep while you were in test pilot school?
Yeah,
TPS for pilots tends to be a little bit easier than it is for the engineers. So each class my class was 20 people, 10 pilots and 10 engineers. Or
where is this held? Where does this
Edwards Air Force Base, right where where Chuck Yeager broke the speed of sound. And,
okay.
Yeah, so it is. So in my case, I applied, got picked up, and I think I mentioned earlier that they would send a couple people per class to, if you didn't have a master's degree prior in some sort of technical field, they would send you to go get a master's degree. So I was one of the ones that was sent to Air Force Institute of Technology, AFIT, in Dayton, Ohio, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was great. It was, 15 months. I had a young family, and my job was to go to school, 3 hours a day for a year.
And getting paid.
Getting paid to go to school, young family. We rented a house with a pool. It was great. And then work on technical degree. So I was in aeronautics. I was getting an aero degree. And the cool thing is my master's thesis, I would work with the TPS to work on a program that I would take with me to test pilot school, and then it would eventually, in the second half of TPS, be test management project that we would, each class would do 3 or 4 test management projects as kind of a graduation exercise and program where you would flight test whatever it is you're working on. So for those of us that were at AFIT, we would flight test our projects or whatever we were studying, and then the school would develop a couple of programs for the non-AFIT students. And so it was pretty interesting. I got to take work that I had worked on a computer in Dayton, Ohio, and put it on an F-16 variable stability simulator. It's a one-off aircraft in the Air Force that's basically a flying simulator. It looks like an F-16, but it has, in the front cockpit, it has a center stick and a side stick, and the cockpit, the rear cockpit is the instructor, the person that flies the airplane to get it airborne and to land it, but the front is basically a simulator, and you can make it fly like anything you want. You can make it fly like a C-5, you can make it fly like one of those X-plane lifting bodies that the $6 million man crashed in the opening credits of the Bionic Man or whatever show was. So, or you can make an F-16 fly like an F-15, and it actually lands nicely instead of lands skipping down the runway like F-16.
No shit.
So I got to put the work that I had done at AFIT onto that aircraft and fly it, which was pretty unique.
So what's the curriculum of test pilot school like? I mean, where do they start? Yeah, I'm assuming they break it into phases.
Yep, absolutely. So you start out lots of academics for performance and handling qualities, and then so they have a performance phase as you start out and you start flying. So there is a lot of academics, and then you fly. The first few weeks, you're getting checked out to fly certain aircraft that are part of the baseline curriculum. So in general, they have T-38s, F-16s, and C-12s. The C-12 is a King Air. Mm-hmm. And if you're coming from fighters, they would put you in the performance phase in a C-12. If you're coming from heavies or airlift and you're slow-moving herbivore types, they would put you in either T-38 or F-16, and then miscellaneous would be in the F-16 for the performance phase. So
is that just to get you out of your normal...
Out of your comfort zone, absolutely. The whole design is to get you out of your comfort zone. So the first phase is all about performance and handling qualities. You get checked out to fly those particular aircraft, and you'll fly with student engineers, people in your class. So you get checked out in the aircraft, you go fly these practice sorties or training sorties and basically fly the syllabus, try to do all these different maneuvers that you learn with the instructors. Then you go fly with your engineer, and they're taking data. You're trying to fly the maneuver precisely. And of course, they give you they give you more stuff than you can possibly do in a full tank of gas. Sure. And so it's a lot of managing your time, managing your fuel, and flying precisely to try to collect the data that you need to then come back and write your reports and whatnot. But
so, were you ever a post-maintenance test pilot in any of your
FCF? No, not operationally. No.
So, the best I can relate to this is Repeat and I both were PMCF pilots in different airframes, and if you were doing a full A card, it was a lot to do in one bag of gas. You had to keep going. So I'm picturing what you're doing only on steroids, right? And you got to be
very focused. Yeah. So those particular sorties are not a functional check flight or post maintenance flight. I do those now every once in a while in the T-38, and just like you just said, it's like there's more to do here than. So you kind of have to. It's like, all right, I'll take for granted that the VOR works.
Yeah, it looks like it's pointing in the right direction.
Right.
Let's go.
So, but yes, very similar. They give
the
you
altimeter is not off by 1,000 feet.
Whoa,
right.
Whoa, we're going to come back to that. We're going to come back.
So, yes, very, very busy. They get you out of your comfort zone, and really what test pilot school does is it gets you to, one, be really good at mitigating risk and identifying safety hazards. And then you'd think, oh, hey, test pilot, they're probably really good at flying airplanes and this and that. But I would say,
what?
Right, I would say it makes you decent at flying anything, but not really good at flying wherever you came from or any individual aircraft. So it was very common after TPS, you'd go back to your aircraft that you came from. So after test pilot school, I did testing in the C-17 for a year, and then back to the B-2 for a few years. And every once in a while, like when I was in the C-17, you would fly with some operators, some C-17, just vanilla crew, and it had been at that point, I was away in the B-2 for 4 years, TPS for another year, and then I'm back in the C-17 after being away for 5+ years.
Yeah.
And they look at you like, oh, you're supposed to be this hot shit pilot in the C-17. It's like, dude, I can't remember what.
And you're like, how do you start this thing?
Right. It's like, yeah, right. And so you get good at flying anything, but not really good at flying any particular aircraft. And so that's what it does.
How many different airplanes did you fly at test pilot school?
I'd have to go look, but it was anywhere between 18 and 24.
Holy shit. I was guessing 8 to 10.
I was thinking 5 or 6.
No, so everybody flies T-38, F-16, and C-12 quite a bit. And then talking about phases of test pilot school, you'll go from performance and handling qualities to, there's a mission systems phase, there's a project management phase, and then there's a qualitative evaluation phase where they bring in planes from all over the country or world, and they'll bring them in and have everybody fly them once. So there's a lot of planes that you'll fly once. Like I got to fly the F-15C, F-15E, the Extra 300, the T-2 Buckeye,
that Buckeye.
Yeah, that was
anything for?
Yeah, so we would also do a field. We called it a field trip. Half my class went to Brazil and flew a bunch of planes down there and helicopters. And I went up to Cold Lake. Yeah.
Hold on.
So I went up to Cold Lake, Canada with about 4 or 5 of us, and I got to fly the Hawk, the Tudor. I don't know what the designation is, but it's the Snowbirds aircraft. That was
It looks a lot like a T-37 sort of.
Yes. It's like a super tweet.
Yeah.
And then the F-18C. And so that was my experience on that field trip. And then went to the Navy test pilot school. They've got a bunch of planes out there. That was my first helicopter ride, which was one of them. To that point was probably the coolest flight I'd ever been on. It was an OH-57 or OH-58 flying with the
Sticks
Army
is smiling
test
from
pilot.
ear to ear right now. He is squirming in his seat right now because you said that.
He's a little
So,
moist.
You hop in. So it was, I think it was when was this? It was cold, and it was some Army test pilot at the Navy test pilot school, helicopter guy, and going to fly my first helicopter. He's like, mind if we just take off the doors? I'm like, no, cool. So we just had the doors removed. And he did the first takeoff, and then as soon as we're airborne, I'm flying it out to this auxiliary field and then land, and that's where I learned how to hover and strafe and do auto rotations and all that. It was a blast. It was really cool experience. So
Shit hot. I cut you off on the T2. What were you going to say about the T2?
So
Fucking ugly airplane. Is what he was
So we would bring the T2 out because it is known for being a very unpredictable departure aircraft. So you go out of control in any sort of weird way.
But forgiving, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still alive, so yes, we
were forced to do. It was in our syllabus
that was our OCF
flight in it. And then when we were advanced A4 students, right before we started the air combat phase, we would have to go back and do another out of control flight. Flight
inverted spins.
It was not fun times at all, really.
So we would contract with, I believe it was Teton Aviation. I think they're out of Riggs, Idaho or something. And it was this group. They had a bunch of different warbirds.
That's exactly it. So I was in Driggs a month ago, and I was in the FBO, and I looked down the passageway, and there's a picture of a T2 on the wall, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's out in the hangar. Went out and looked. I've flown this airplane. I was like, holy shit.
That may be the one I flew because a guy named Cujo came down and
FBO, and he has that. He's got a couple other really neat birds. So he comes down and he flies the T2 with every student, all engineers and pilots. And the mission is go up and just depart it, just departure after departure, and different entries give you different results. And when this guy, the instructor owner of the plane that is down at TPS every 6 months with 20 different students, they've done a lot of these sorties, and this plane departs in weird ways when on one of your departures, the guy in the back that is responsible for your safety goes, whoa, as you do a particular departure. It's like, oh, you've never seen that before? How is it possible? You've never seen this particular plane depart in that particular way. So
I have a theory.
Yeah.
It's done it so many times, it's getting bent in different ways, so it never departs the same anymore.
It doesn't. Well, when you look at it from the side, it looks like a big billboard, but from the front, it looks like normal, cross section. So, if you get any sort of beta on it or side slip, it who knows what kind of aero forces are going to happen.
Before we get too far downrange, I need to back up and ask you this is going to sound like a stupid question, and coming from me, it probably is, but here's my question. So you had 20 guys in your class. 10 were pilots, and 10 were engineers. Yeah. These are Air Force engineers?
That's
Air
right.
Force guys that their job in the Air Force was what exactly? Just to be engineers?
No, that's right. Some of them would be involved in flight test or, and I'm not going to do it justice, and I apologize to any of them that might hear this, but yeah, there's an engineering career field in the Air Force, and you could
Were
be
you
doing,
aware of that,
you know,
Repeat?
I had no idea.
I mean, this is what I'm wrapping my head around that. So, okay.
so they end up,
Obviously-
they're the ones that do most of the work during TPS because they're the ones doing all the report writing and whatnot. So
Thank God someone knows how to do technical writing.
right, exactly. And so, and they're the ones in the back, not at the controls, trying not to get sick. And so, no, they're great, and they're the ones that in the flight test world are doing the planning and managing of the test programs and conducting the test.
So they're working with manufacturers and
room.
development of new airplanes.
Absolutely.
What's their main function on a Tuesday?
Well, when it comes to flight testing, they will be writing test plans, coordinating assets for test sorties, briefing the test mission, and then conducting the mission. You know, it's kind of, as a pilot, you're sitting there flying the maneuvers, and the test conductor or test director is an engineer that is basically running the script and talking through the limitations. And
that makes sense too, I guess. And also, I guess, you know, we talked about it briefly with Bart back when he was talking about bringing the lantern on. So they need the engineers to bring new weapon systems onto an airplane so that, you know, when the missile leaves the rail, it doesn't rip your wing off. I guess that's an important.
Right. Yeah. So they do all the work. We get all the glory.
Right.
As it should be, because you're the pilot.
Yeah. Any questions here? If you want the glory, go be a pilot, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I would say in my current job, a lot of them are pilots on the side. It's great because then they have a sense of what makes sense. You know, sometimes you'll have test plans that have parameters and tolerances that don't make any sense, and so they're good cross check on those types of things.
Let's wander into that.
So I don't want to say. So it's hard to.
No, here I can do it. I think, Fig. So your current job, you are doing test flight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're a test pilot for an aircraft manufacturer. Can we just?
I
say
wouldn't
that
even
much?
say that.
Yeah.
Let me take that.
Well, we can back up. So I did test pilot school at Edwards, which is is a year long. Finished up. They sent me off to go test the C-17 for a year, and did a bunch of C-17 testing and dropping some 30,000 pound sea containers out of the cargo bay, unrecoverable, just to test the flight control system, things like that. Large formation station keeping equipment. And then I went to the B-2 test squadron and did about 2.5, 3 years of testing in the B-2 at the B-2 test squadron. Lots of OFP upgrades and things like that. And then, so that took me to about 15 years of service and 4 or so years at Edwards. And of course, in the military, they've got to move you at some point. And so at that point, the Air Force had contracted for the new tanker, the KC-46, with Boeing, and I had having the time in the C-17 test squadron, which was kind of the primary test unit for that program. I had an in, and also my coworker in the B-2 test was the flesh peddler at Air Force Personnel Center at the time. So so I was able to come back up to Seattle to test the KC-46 when it was first coming out. And so that was my last 5 years in the Air Force, was testing the KC-46. I was one of the first 3 pilots on that program. And that brought me to 20 years of service in the Air Force. And my last 5 years in the Air Force was up here in Seattle, back home. So it's been great.
I've got a stupid question then. If that airplane, the C-46, is the military variant of the 767.
Correct.
I think I answered my question earlier about new weapon systems and all that, but What the hell needs to be tested on it? What are you testing?
That's when you get into FAA requirements and military requirements. And that particular program, the Air Force in the contract language said FAA certified to the max extent possible. So when you modify commercial variant of an aircraft, any modification, you put a whatever it is, Starlink. You put Starlink antenna, somebody has to certify that install. So you think how small a Starlink antenna impacts.
In general aviation, we call it an STC.
Exactly.
Certificate. You have to put something on, and then the FAA has to go Omni VOR, bless
That's
it.
Right.
You're good to go.
So you have your type certificates, you have your supplemental type certificates, STCs, you have your ATCs, amended types. So those are typically smaller changes, and then your MTCs, military type certificates. So that particular program had all of those. It took a 767, changed enough of the outer mold line. It basically took a 767, I believe 200 fuselage, put 400 wings on or 300 wings on and different engines. And so you start strapping all this. We called it a Frankentanker early on. And so you have to certify that new configuration. And so we had ATC, STC, and MTC testing for all of it. And so, it was a pretty significant program.
Yeah. Okay. Which reminds me, so one day I land in Ontario, California, and I'm taxiing in. Ground goes, hey, you got time for a question? Yeah, because so we're trying to solve a bet up here. Are you, and I'm flying a 777 freighter. Are you a 777-200 or 300? And my answer was, yes, I am. Because I was a 200 fuselage with 300 wings. So I get it. Mix and match.
Yeah.
So Mr. Potato Head on the
Franken-tanker. I like it.
That's right.
I like it.
Frankentanker. That's show title. I think that wins out over all the others up
I'm
to now.
writing it down right now. Franken-tanker.
Don't call me a tanker pilot.
That's right.
All the boom operators I've been flying with for, 15 years now. Like, hey, I'm not a tanker pilot, but that's what I fly.
But, well, there's that. So,
I was thinking of a question while you guys were talking just then, and I didn't write it down. But as soon as you're done talking, I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to ask the question, and it'll come back to me.
Away.
And I'm going to interrupt this time, or maybe I'll try to write it down.
It was all that FAA certification talk.
No,
there you go.
No,
well,
that went right over my bald head.
Here, I'll ask this question then, and we chatted briefly yesterday in a pre-show sound check, and I was telling him I watched the YouTube videos of the 777 brake test, and they do a max weight, max speed reject, and basically catching the main gear on fire. I mean, get them as hot as they can, and then the airplane comes to a stop, and then all of a sudden
everything's glowing
the tire,
red.
everything, all the tires are blown, flames shooting out of the gear, and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing they do is they take great big airplanes up in the sky, and they stall them, and they sometimes spin them. I don't think intentionally. And I remember, Fig, you may remember this, the MD-11 testing going on at Yuma when we were out there dropping bombs and shit.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Watching those guys take off. Now, granted, they were not full power or fully loaded aircraft, but those fuckers would rotate and pull the nose up 45, 50 degrees. I'm going, holy shit, we don't climb away like that in a Harrier. Yeah, and Styx has a picture up of something they've just done a reject test on. But that shit is terrifying. Are you doing that shit?
Not regular, but I am able to do it, yes.
Only on Tuesdays.
Right. So interesting enough, my very first flight in the KC-46 back in 2015, when I was on the Air Force side of that program, my very first flight was going out and doing stalls testing. So we went out and went beyond stick shaker to stall. And you go to different flight conditions, different flap settings and whatnot, different altitudes. And the engineers have you have certification criteria for, the plane. You have certain certification criteria for when you identify stall, and one might be deterrent buffet, meaning the plane is just buffeting like the bucking bronco. Another is full aft stick. If you're full aft stick or full aft yoke, that is the identification of, all right, you're in a stall. And the other is pitch attitudes not readily arrestable. And so they say, based on this flight condition, this is what you expect. Then you go test it and say, okay, yeah, I experienced that. Yeah, it was deterrent buffet or whatnot. So you have certain certification criteria for different stalls, different altitudes, airspeeds, and configurations. And you go out and verify it and make sure that there's nothing bad happens.
How about this? I know, right?
What if something bad happens?
Hold on a second.
You plan for if something bad happens, and then you have ways to recover.
Speaking of something bad happens, I've watched a test video of max crosswind demonstrations. Yeah, that's some scary shit. I mean, yeah, you do that. You've been involved.
Yeah, actually, I've been on some. We do crosswind. When I was in the Air Force, we did failure mode auto land with extreme headwinds and extreme crosswind approach testing. And so this was on the tanker and the KC-46, and so we went out to Lincoln, and that's where we had our crosswinds, and you would, let's say, be on approach doing an auto landing, so 3 autopilots on, and then they would deliberately fail hydraulic system or fail one of the autopilots and verify that the plane behaves how it's expected to in that failure mode, and then you go around and if you're familiar with 767, the autopilot, the rudder compensation kicks off at 400 feet, and so you got to be ready for that when that happens, and so, you go out and you test all this. And so I don't know if you're familiar, the Boeing company will, in their flight manuals, will say, they won't say what your crosswind limits are, but they will say what it's been tested to. So it's up to the operators
we call it the recommended crosswind table, because that's what it says in our manual at my company. Recommended crosswind,
right?
Not the limit. It is a recommended crosswind.
And in flight testing, they will go and get as much of a crosswind as they possibly can. They have targets, but you have to have the conditions to be able to test it. And so if you can't get those conditions, then you can only, let's say you're trying to get 45 knot crosswinds and you can only get 37. Then that's what will go into the flight manual.
And they need to go to the Azores, where there's always.
They've gone out to Greenland. They go out. They go all over the place to chase these conditions.
I remembered what the question was. I wrote it down.
You would.
I just so you said you spent time all in the C-17 test squadron and also the B-2 test squadron. Yeah. Where physically are these squadrons located?
So the C-17 squadron is physically located they're both at Edwards Air Force Base. The B-2 test squadron was on the south, what they call it South Base, so it's where
but it's at Edwards. It's not at a C-17 base or a B.
No, everything was
based. Okay.
Yeah, everything was at Edwards.
I can get on with the rest of my life now.
All right.
That's nuts.
Yeah, there was in Edwards. It's kind of funny. You'll see a lot of the Marvel movies. What's the one? Not Captain America. I don't know.
The one with the flying
Superman.
robot.
I've been in the tower when Superman was being filmed out on the dry lake bed, and you'll see. I've got coworkers that are extras in a lot of those movies that have military aircraft and scenes that look like they're out of the desert. They're all out of Edwards Air Force Base. So when I was at test pilot school, it was Iron Man. That's what it was. At Iron Man, during Iron Man filming, I think it was the original movie, or one of the movies, whatever was filmed in 2009, stepping to go fly, and you'd walk through the hangar, and there's the Iron Man suit in the hangar. as we're walking to go fly. So yeah, they do a lot of movie filming out at Edwards Air Force Base.
That was a fun movie to watch in theater with the full Dolby surround. Yeah. So very cool. All right. Well, so how close have you come, or to unintentionally bending metal? I'm sure you've bent some metal on purpose. But
so at test pilot school, I guess I'll make this shorter story long. We had F-22 accident when I was a student. That it was a guy, Cools was his call sign. They were doing a test sortie, and the F-22 did a split S test point and held a little too long. There was a lot to this particular test point. Bottom line is the guy ejected out of the envelope and died. So there was a fatality in, I believe it was April of 2009, as I was pretty fresh into test pilot school. And of course, there's a little bit of a stand down at the base, and we had a fatality when I was there. Fast forward a month, and I did a T-38 test sortie like I was talking about, and with a student in the back, and we're going out and collecting data and practicing for a check ride or something on doing performance and handling qualities. You do a bunch of different maneuvers. Land, so I was in the morning sortie. Land, go back to the squadron or the school, and classmate of mine who was a former U-2 and KC-135 pilot, he's stepping to go fly, and so we gave him our gouge, tips on what we learned on our sortie.
Live by the gouge, die by the gouge.
Yeah, and they go out, and an hour later or so, we're all called into the auditorium, and it's like, hey, Dash and guy in the back seat, oh, geez, now I'm forgetting his call sign. They didn't come back, so it's like, oh, shit. So real. We had fatality in our class. My classmate of mine died in a T-38 crash in the plane that I flew in the morning go. So it was, needless to say, it was a tragic event. Everybody thought for a while that it was something that he had done or they had done based on the information we had, because the guy in the back, he was a former navigator. He survived, very lucky to survive. He got out, and the T-38's not an automatic ejection. If it's individual ejection. So
not command eject. Yeah.
Right.
It's not one goes, both go. Okay.
So guy in the back got out. He was near death, but survived. And based on what we learned from him, we thought, it may have been something that the guy in the front did. But it turns out that they had a rudder hard over. They were doing a test point at 20,000 feet and 0.8 Mach, and they had a rudder hard over. Plane went out of control. The Dash, my buddy in the front seat, was incapacitated. The guy in the back, his recollection was, they go out of control. He kind of blacked out for a moment. He doesn't know if it was for half a second or 4 seconds or what. Wow. He comes to, sees they're spinning out of control. He tries to recover the plane, commands ejection. He gets out. He ended up having to medically retire because he lost a bunch of muscle and bone out of his arm in the ejection process. Almost died. But my buddy Dash in the front was apparently incapacitated all the way to hitting the ground. So we had a fatality in my class, and I was the last person to land that particular tail.
Wow.
Prior to that, so
that's a sobering event.
It is. Of course, So I don't know if you're familiar with the tradition of burning pianos. I think started in the RAF in World War II, and when aviators wouldn't come back.
Oh, talk about that.
So there was a tradition out of it, and it's hard to find the origin, but the common knowledge is that in the RAF back in World War II, aviators wouldn't come back from a mission, and they would somewhere somebody burned a piano with the whole squadron present, and So we would, for my buddy, we started the tradition of burning piano out at the crash site just north of Edwards every year on or near the anniversary of the crash. And so it's been a couple years, but we've over the years burned, I don't know, 10, 15 pianos.
That's awesome.
Yeah, out at the crash site.
I hope they're really
May
expensive.
21st.
Mark
Graziano.
Graziano.
Dash was his call. And he was an incredible guy. He was one of those tinkers. He would engineer he turned his, I think, Honda Civic into a biodiesel that he would make his own fuel. Yeah. He would, instead of, some people brew their own beer with equipment they buy from a store, but he would manufacture and make the equipment that he would brew his own beer.
That's pretty awesome.
He was a unique cat, and, gone too young.
Can you define, I mean, we know, but we have a lot of non-aviation listeners. Can you define out of the envelope? You said he was
outside.
Outside the envelope.
From ejection.
Can you just kind of put that in a non-aviator term?
Yeah. So when it comes to ejection seats are qualified or certified or qualified to be able to, I wouldn't say guarantee, but improve your odds of survival by ejecting in a certain airspeed and altitude and attitude envelope. And your chances go way down if you're outside of that envelope. So I think in the T-38, the ejection seat, so it's an old aircraft, so the ejection seat required a minimum of 50 knots of airspeed on the ground to be able to pull the handles and eject out of the aircraft and have chances of survival. If you were sitting in the chocks, starting the engines, and you pulled the handles, you probably would not survive. But you needed at least 50 knots of airspeed to get that parachute to open up and improve your chances of surviving that ejection. So when you're airborne, if you're low to the ground or inverted or not at an upright attitude when you eject, your ejection seat performance is affected by that envelope, or it's tested in a certain envelope. So modern ejection seats are pretty good. You could be at just about any attitude and airspeed other than really close to the ground and be able to have a good chance of surviving the ejection. But when I talked about the F-22, he was supersonic and low and aimed towards the ground when he ejected. And so that's why he was outside the envelope of survival.
Yeah, because that's an amazing seat in that airplane. However,
yes.
Not because of that, the parameters you just described, it gets real small.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a split S maneuver. That F-22 test, if I remember right, was a split S maneuver where the test condition was to open and close a weapon bay door at a certain G and airspeed. And you would do split S's to maintain your energy to meet that parameter. It wasn't that the split S or being inverted was part of the test point. It was that's how you had to be able to maintain the energy to be on the condition to open and close a door. And he held it a little too long, and it may have been that there was some misunderstanding about how long he needed to hold it, and so he was pointed down and fast for a little too long, and when he went to recover, he was pointed at the ground and going very, very fast. And when he made the decision to get out of the aircraft, he was too low to the ground and too fast.
Roger that.
Yeah, right. So what's thinking like you said, it's not necessarily part of the maneuver, but it's how you maintain your energy. So what's the most unusual maneuver you've ever done as a test pilot for something like that? Are you doing a split S in the C-46 to maintain your energy state in a?
Yeah. So interesting enough, most of those, what you would call higher risk maneuvers and, test pilot maneuvers, most of that is done at the test pilot school, and that's where you experience it. Beyond that, when you start to get to contractor work and
Mm-hmm.
doing work on an actual test program, they do safety mitigation and lots of workups and try to minimize the amount of times that you're actually in those higher risk scenarios. So after test pilot school, it's been very, very minimal.
A lot more vanilla. Okay.
Very
Was
much vanilla.
So if you can
And
live-
it's
I
kind
was
of
talking about
it's kind of
the
boring.
videos that I watched of,
boring. It's not.
of like the tail
Come on.
plane trying to rip off the MD-11 as
Right.
they're doing stall testing in it and all that. And you explain why, you're not worried about the tail coming apart.
Well, you've got mountains and mountains of data and engineering work to give you confidence that the tail's not just going to fall off. And we instrument the aircraft with systems and sensors that monitor that risk. And so you'll instrument those aircraft that you're going to put through those paces. You instrument them and have people monitoring that data such that when you approach those limits where you think, all right, I'm going to have a structural, I'm going to bend the plane or I'm going to break the plane, you have knock it off criteria that allows you to avoid hitting those limits.
That's fascinating.
So it does become very
comforting. It's comforting
vanilla
to hear
and
things like
benign.
that, right?
It's not as sexy as the Chuck Yeager days in the '60s where they were just go up and check it out.
See how fast it'll go today.
Yeah.
Right?
But there was the incident back in the early 90s where the guy tried to commandeer a DC-10 and they inverted the airplane. They did all kinds of things to take him off his balance while they were fighting him. Went to damn near supersonic. They were at 0.95, 0.98 Mach, something like that. They had the DC-10 inverted. Basically did something close to a split S, and that airplane stayed together throughout.
That's right.
And continued to fly revenue service for another 25 years.
Yeah, these planes are built very robust. I mean, they need to, they certify them well
They need to be
beyond
pilot proof.
right, and they'll take them out. When you have your speed limits. We have dive speeds that we test to that are well beyond the actual speed limits of the aircraft, and so
you're flying past the barber pole, as we call it.
That's right, and it's only in the initial certification of the aircraft that they do that type of testing. So,
Hey, I have practical aerodynamic question for you. If you were willing to
I was under the understanding there wouldn't be
Stump the dummy.
No, so I want to see. So are you familiar with the A4 Skyhawk?
I am.
Douglas airplane. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what do you think caused this? At one point,
Aside from Fig is not the answer.
Yeah. So at one point, I became an unbeknownst to me, I was a test pilot for a few seconds in my cockpit because I was alone and I couldn't understand what was happening. But so here's the scenario: the airplane is slick, no drop tanks, no bomb racks, nothing. It's slick, and I'd never flown one that was completely slick before. So I thought, I'm going to see how fast this thing will go. So at one point, I was pointing straight down with full power just to see how fast it would go. And it got to be where everything was shaking. The canopy was starting to rattle and make noise. It was really starting to get uncomfortable. So I thought, and it wasn't accelerating anymore. And I thought, well, all right, I should probably think about recovering from this because I was supposed to level it let's say 10,000 feet. And the earth was starting to get really big to me. So I pulled the throttle to idle, and then I went forward in the straps. It's like a big parachute came out.
Oh yeah.
And then I went to pull back on the stick, And as I pulled back on the stick, I was being very gentle because I was going so damn fast. I got to the end of the stick travel. It was at the end, no more stick travel, and I was still pointing straight down.
So, a couple thoughts. One, you shouldn't have been doing that.
Dumbass.
Yeah.
Okay, besides that. Hey, it has a happy ending. I'm telling the story.
What's the published speed limit?
So the NATOPS manual said the maximum airspeed for that airplane was 1.04 Mach, or I don't know, something like 510 knots. Like that.
So as you go transonic and then supersonic, the center of pressure on your wing, on your control surfaces, moves aft. So it goes from about the quarter chord to about half chord, and so your pitch moments will change. You also, for a subsonic, even though 1.04 is supersonic, for subsonic aircraft, that's a delta wing, but some straight wing aircraft you've heard of Mach tuck.
Yeah.
So World War II, they experienced that because those aircraft were not designed to go supersonic, but found themselves approaching it. As that center of pressure moves aft, your ability to create a pitch moment changes because those centers of pressure change, and you'll get into what's known as a Mach tuck. And so that kind of, I don't know if you were talking about saving a story for the end, but had a sortie.
Oh, don't tell your story. Yeah. We'll wait for the end because the end is near. But let me tell you what I did and what I think happened. And I want to, So once I panicked, and I cycled the stick a few times. I thought, this is the end. Something broke. Then I thought, wait a minute. That airplane had an elevator, and the stabilator moved with the trim.
Yep.
And the elevator was back there doing this. When I'm doing this, the elevator's doing this. There's no airflow going right there because the shock wave, was somewhere forward of that, and there was no air. So when I hit the trim switch, I got 6 Gs. Oof.
Yeah.
Because I moved the whole tailplane.
So in the T-38, we at Test Pilot School, we demonstrate that, called it dig in, where you would go supersonic. T-38 doesn't do a very good job of going supersonic straight and level, but in a dive and afterburner, it was pretty good. So you'd have a sortie where you'd go supersonic and then start a turn, and then as you slow down from supersonic to subsonic, without moving the stick, you would experience just that. You would get this dig in where, as that center of pressure moved, this stabilator, whatever, we didn't have any elevators. We just had a stabilizer.
Yeah.
It would, without it moving at all, with the center of pressure change as you go supersonic to subsonic, it would dig in, and you would just get a much higher pitch rate. So it's along those. It's all aerodynamics. It's all magic, smoke and mirrors. But
I dug right in there with that.
And that's what they discovered in the Chuck Yeager days with the X1, was using a movable stabilizer to deal with those trim changes as you go supersonic, rather than just an elevator that loses authority as you go transonic and supersonic. So,
well,
engineers and maths.
That's right.
I could get Brown Liquor out and talk to you all day, because you're, first of all, you're super humble, more humble than you should be. But you are a wealth of information. In if you like talking about flying shit, you're the kind of guy I like to talk to.
Right. And Sticks put up the question that he is going to say is not a very satisfying answer. But which is your favorite child?
Yeah. So. I've been asked this many times, and the cliche answer, and it's true to some in a lot of ways, is that whatever I flew last. I really I fly the KC-46 quite a bit. And the 767. I fly 737s, 777s every once in a while. T-38 I still get to fly. They're all great. They're all airplanes. If I flew a Cessna today, I would probably say this Cessna 172. So airplanes, they're all cool. I have a few memories of unique experiences that are great. C-17 was my first love, as an operator in the Air Force. Had a lot of good experiences in the C-17. B-2 is cool. It's great to look at. It's unique to say that you're a B-2 pilot. It was great. The community was great. My kids were young when we lived out there. And then, of the 20 or so planes I flew at test pilot school, they're all great. But I will say my first experience flying a helicopter was awesome because it was just that. It was very unique. Did it once or twice. It was really cool to experience that and learn how to hover and do all those all those things. We're looking at a picture of an helicopter upside down.
A helicopter on its resting on its rotors.
But I will say, I got to fly F-16. I don't know, half a dozen or more times. F-15 a couple times. F-18 once. HU-16 Albatross, which is an old World War II era boat plane. I had a check ride in that, which was fascinating. Only check ride I've ever been on where I was grinning ear to ear the entire time.
That's pretty awesome.
Old T6 Texan.
Is that like, that's got to be like lifting dumbbells and shit, though, trying to move.
It was just, it was slow and loud and heavy, but it was fun. It was one of those, I'm getting a check ride as the pilot and my classmate engineer is getting a check ride as a test conductor. And so we coordinate as a student pair for our check ride on this plane that we've never flown before. And so you roll out, and of course you've got the owner of the plane sitting next to you, and you roll out onto the runway and you're supposed to line up a little bit cockeyed, not nose down the runway, a little bit cockeyed, so that when the P factor and everything happens, that you
don't run out of rudder initially.
Right, exactly. And so we're sitting there. And normally, you would over the headset and the intercom, you would say, "All right, 3, 2, 1, brake, release now," and that would give them their stop clock timing for measuring takeoff distance. All the stuff we had to do as students and for our check ride. So the throttles are up above on the overhead panel in this Albatross, and so run up the engines, and it was so loud. I mean, it was louder than any rock concert you've ever been to. And I'm sitting there trying to talk, 3, 2, 1, brake release, and I'm just sitting there laughing because I couldn't hear myself, let alone there's no way he can hear me. So I'm just sitting there laughing like, all right, you start using hand signals on when you're going to release the brakes so he can start his clock. So just stuff like that. Flew extra 300, tried not to get sick in that thing. They're all great, but I'll just leave it at that. Every aircraft is awesome.
And then, of course, what haven't you flown that you want to?
So every class at TPS gets to fly a variety of the aircraft for qualitative evaluations. And some classes get to fly the A-10. And the A-10 is unique because it's a single seat aircraft. There's no two-seaters out there operating. And so my class had 2 slots to go fly the A-10, and I was not one of them. Some classes would have 5 or more.
Damn it.
So that was one that I could have flown, and the whole mission for that as a TPS student is go out there, do a couple simulators, and then next day you go fly with the instructor in the airplane next to you, and you go fly and you go out to the range and you shoot the gun. And so that is the one. That is the one plane. Right. Exactly. That's the one plane that I would have loved to have flown just to shoot that gun. I mean,
man.
And everybody I've talked to that did it, they're like, you pull the trigger a little bit, and everything stabilizes and nothing moves, and then you full squeeze, and it just annihilates what you're looking at.
Put the thing on the thing, and that thing is
exactly
gone.
Exactly.
Oh man.
So A10, maybe F4, because I've heard similar to your story about when you go to idle, it's you're thrust forward in your harness. I had a buddy that flew the F4 at test pilot school in a different class, and they were doing low level, going real fast, and he went to idle, and he was slammed forward into his harness, and so
yeah,
that's my answer.
Okay,
well,
great
short answer, long answer.
Yeah, these are all great answers, is what it boils down to. And so this is the end of what I'm going to call 2 shows, which we didn't know going into this, but we have been chatting together here for better than 2.5 hours. So fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sparky. Oh, let's land it with real quickly with this story. Call sign. How'd you get Sparky?
So it was. So I don't really go by it. I guess my classmates, TPS classmates, will call me it. But when I come out of the C-17, I'm just Lieutenant Rain, Captain Rain, whatever. And normally, so the herbivore community, which is what the tactical guy. That's what the tactical guys would call us. The guy that ejected out of the B-2, he called me an herbivore. First time I met him, like, all right, whatever. So get to the B-2 squadron, and we would do these naming ceremonies to get people call signs. Most people would show up with the call sign, but those of us that didn't, they would do these naming ceremonies. Well, they saved my naming ceremony for our deployment to Guam, and I had at that time been with the squadron for quite a while. So I was not the new guy anymore, but I still didn't have a call sign. And we're out in Guam, of course, having a few pops, and some of the younger guys had gone first and got their names. And if your naming ceremonies in the Marines or Navy are similar to the Air Force, you can give gifts in the form of bottles of alcohol to influence what you end up with. Well, I had run out of gifts paying for my buddies' call signs. And it was my turn, and they send you out of the room, and they've got a whiteboard, and everybody throws out a bunch of names, and it's all your standard junk
Shaved
call
dog's
signs, Asfache, and
Shaved dog's ass.
That's exactly. It's dumb stuff. And so, all right, come back in. And then the protocol is you come back in, and you can pay down and eliminate different names. Well, I didn't have anything to eliminate, and I had been drinking, and I was not a new guy. I was pretty senior at that time. So I'm like, these are all stupid. You guys suck. And I hadn't screwed anything up at that point. So there was nothing that stuck with me. Like I hadn't, some people.
Boom, boom.
Exactly. Some people screwed
flare.
things up. So I had a clean record, clean slate. So they had nothing. And so I'm like, these all suck. So, all right, send me back out of the room. And as I was leaving the room, apparently Lippy, a guy, B-52 guy, he's like, Claw, cries like a woman, because I was crying about how bad these call signs were.
Yeah.
So that's what I got stuck with, was Claw, out of that naming ceremony. And the funny thing is, so I get this call sign. They wouldn't tell me what Claw meant at the time until I get back to my hooch, and this is late at night, but early in the morning Pacific time, or Central time, which is where my wife was. So I give my wife a call. Hey, man, the naming ceremony, blah, blah. I'm all drunk. And I'm like, you'll never guess what they call me. She's like, what? Crybaby? And so she knew. So that was
Club already knew.
Exactly. So she knew what was coming, and it was fitting at the time. But at some point, we had another naming ceremony a year or so later, and they decided to rename me. And my wife had gone out to Vegas with her mom and her mom's best friend who owns a casino in northern Nevada, and they would go to these things in Vegas, and they went out to a concert. Oh, geez, who's the guy that would do the Vegas shows? We're gonna have to pause this because
Wayne Newton.
Wayne Newton.
Yeah. Oh,
So they go to a Wayne
my
Newton.
Uncle
they
Wayne, you know.
Exactly. So they go to a Wayne Newton concert or show in Vegas, and they're in the Golden Circle because my mother-in-law best friend is wealthy, and he's a big military supporter, USO type supporting guy, and so at some point in the show, my mother-in-law is like, my daughter's husband's in the Air Force, this and that, and so Wayne Newton brings my wife up on the stage and serenades her and smooches on her. And so
it's like Vegas vacation.
Exactly. So that's where Sparky comes from, because Chevy Chase
fantastic.
in that movie series is known as Sparky. So that's where Sparky comes from. It's from my wife being smooched on by Wayne Newton.
That's awesome.
So,
well, there you
Love
go.
that.
I didn't land gear up
very
with
claw.
Sparky in the Air Force. Yeah.
And a good segue into landing the plane, because we want to thank all active duty military and veterans and their families who support them and make it all possible. So thank you for all of you who have served and do serve and who support those who serve.
Ditto.
We're deeply grateful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Special thanks to Dave Hamilton at backbeatmedia.com. Handles our advertising. Also does many other things for us. He got us going, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Gave us all the knowledge that we need. And again, like you said, supports us with advertising and that kind of stuff. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, backbeatmedia.com. Thanks also to all the people on this planet who have lost all sense of financial responsibility and go over to sothereiwas.us/Patreon or sothereiwas.us/donate and crack your wallets open and give us money to keep this show coming to you. It's not a cheap proposition, and we're deeply grateful that you share your good fortune with us so that we can share these amazing guests with you.
Quite frankly, I'm amazed half the time that you people have lost your judgment and send us money, but I am so humbled. And I want to reiterate. I want to repeat for both of us.
That's easy
how
for you
much
to say.
we really appreciate it. Otherwise, Repeat's going to be writing giant checks for this damn thing.
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget, we have a merch store. So thereiwas.us/merch. Bikinis. I know it's not bikini season here, but it is in South
season
America.
is what it is.
You're damn right it is. So
We've got cool merch.
Koozies, hats, mugs, hoodies. I mean, you name it. Plus bikinis.
Get after it.
Did we tell you we have bikinis? Just saying.
I think we mentioned that one other time before. I could be wrong, but
How about this? 5-star rating. 5-star.
So.
If you can't give us 5 stars, tell us why. Because we're trainable.
If you have to give a show 3 stars, find another show and give it to them. But give us 5 stars, please. So thereiwas.us/rate. Follow the links there and give us. And if you'd write a rating, here's the thing about the ratings. If you give a rating and it helps Apple and Spotify both promote us. When they see more good ratings coming in on us, they go, oh, okay, let's put them at the list to recommend to other people. So it helps spread the word. 5 stars. So make it so.
We got Sticks and Bago in the background today. Yep. And they're the true brains and brawn behind the whole operation. Thank you, gentlemen.
Coming up with things like the sound effects. And, well, we didn't live stream this one for a reason that we won't go into. The fact is, when we need a picture of a helicopter, it comes up before we know we need it.
Boom.
And
it's just there. It's crazy.
It's there because Sticks and Bago are top of things. Yeah. So, and Badass over at bdsaviationphotography.com. He is amazing. His photography is like art, and he lets us use his artwork. So we're deeply grateful to you, Badass, for all you do for us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, and then seems to me I've forgotten I don't know, a couple of things here, but maybe some of that sound in the background.
There's the 2 Air Force F-16 pilots that make the whole damn Air Force sound good.
Those guys.
Those gringos.
Those guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, until next week, folks, we don't know what else to say except stay safe and check 6.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hold on. It's what?
He said it's over.
Oh, boy, is this great!
We are out.